You want to make that money. You want to get that marijuana facility. This thing here. Actually, I took a few pages out of this, things that didn't pertain to business related. There's a few pages for the board, and let's just say this is what you have to worry about for your, if you want to get one of these facilities. You have a lot of this law regulations. We're talking about 4209 in Michigan, the new legislative action, which is going to basically license 5 different medical marijuana facilities. You're going to have your growers, your processors, your provisioning centers, your secure transporters, and your safety compliance facilities. You're also going to have all these people that run these facilities are going to be required to interact with a statewide monitoring system. So that's going to create industries around that, just that in itself. And then it also establishes taxes, fees, and assessments. Now, like I said, this is a big monster piece of paper here, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of flip it down while I'm going through the notes to just give you an idea. Maybe I might find some finer points I might want to go over or whatever, but here we go. So there's a few definitions out there. What you have is your grower, who is licensed to cultivate, dry, trim, cure, package for sale to a processor or provisioning center the marijuana. And that's the only people they're allowed to distribute this marijuana to, and it has to be picked up by one of these transporters. Then you have a marijuana facility, which is the actual location where a license holder is licensed to operate this his activities under this act. Paraphernalia is any kind of equipment, product, material, or of any kind that is designed for growing, cultivating, producing, manufacturing, compounding, converting, storing, processing, preparing, transporting, injecting, smoking, ingesting, or otherwise introducing into the human body marijuana. And I still gotta wonder why Michigan uses the H in marijuana. Whenever you see marijuana in their laws, it's always with an H instead of a J. It looks a little bit like that racist propaganda from Reefer Madness. I don't know, just saying. Well, anyway, let's get on with this. Then you have the definition of a person, which means any individual, corporation, limited liability company, partnership, limited liability partnership, limited liability, limited partnership, trust, or other legal entity. Thanks again, Citizens United. So when they say person in here, they could be referring to, or more likely are referring to, a corporation of some sort. And then finally you have definitions for processors and provisioning centers. Now let me get those out. A processor means a licensee that is a commercial entity located in the state that purchases marijuana from a grower, that extracts resins from the marijuana, or creates marijuana-infused products for sale to transfer in packaged form to a provisioning center. So now, what used to be somebody's kitchen is now somebody, this is kind of, alright, now, I'm going to break away from the notes for 1 second and talk about this. The more I read this stuff, the more I think it might be, for a lot of people, this is going to be good. Getting the licenses and paying the fees and assessments on top of that and getting taxed, that sounds all bad. As I conclude this, you'll find out that everybody's trying to get a piece of the marijuana pie, and it's disgusting. A lot of it's going to the police, as you will learn. Anyway, let's just go through it. We're on this here provisioning center. The old days, we used to call them dispensaries, and then you have your collectives, which are more like farmers markets, flea market type places. Now you have provisioning centers, and now I don't know what's going to happen to all the current existing provisioning centers that are there. Like I said, they're the dispensaries or the collectives that we're used to. And now you're going to have this thing called a provisioning center, which is a legally defined place, and this is a legal definition under this law. It means a licensee that is a commercial entity located in this state that purchases marijuana from a grower or processor and sells, supplies, or provides the marijuana to registered qualifying patients directly or through the patient's registered primary caregivers. Let me just go through that one. Let me look at that and say directly or through the patient's registered primary caregivers. It's almost like they're saying that provides marijuana to registered qualifying patients directly. Okay, so they're allowed to sell directly now. This is like breaking the gray area that they used to complain about in the old law. Well, this just right there says that a provisioning center is allowed to sell directly to qualifying patients. All you have to do is be a qualifying patient or caregiver, of course, and they can sell directly to you. They keep track of all the sales and keep track of all the amounts. Again, I don't know what the limits are or whatever that is. Anyway, okay. So, that was that. And as we go on, we have safety compliance facility, which is another one of those laws or licenses that you can get. Safety compliance facility means a licensee that is a commercial entity that receives marijuana from a marijuana facility or registered primary caregiver tested for contaminants and for tetrahydrocannabinol and other cannabinoids, returns the test results, and may return the marijuana to the marijuana facility. Test labs. So they're going to have to get their own licenses. Depending on how much these licenses cost and these fees and these assessment fees, that's the only thing that's going to, like, you know, before people were like, oh no, the legislator is going to write a bill and it's going to basically give the marijuana, the medical marijuana industry, which it really isn't right now. It's kind of a cottage industry, and there's a big difference. But they were afraid that it would turn the cottage industry over to big monopoly players. The more I read this, the more I doubt it. We'll get into that later. But anyway, a safety compliance facility is just, there's only a few labs out there right now that operate. I'm sure they will definitely be willing to jump through the hoops to be compliant with the new law. Why not? And they're going to get so much more business because so many other people are going to have to get their products tested to comply with the law. And then another one is a secure transporter. That's another license you can get. It's a licensee that is a commercial entity located in the state that stores marijuana and transports marijuana between marijuana facilities for a fee. That's just the definition of it. Basically means you're somebody that jumps in a car, and I think the law says there has to be 2 people in the car, and drives marijuana around town. Alright, so anyway, this whole law is all about giving people licenses for these different things, and you have the grower license, the processor license, secure transporter, provisioning center, safety compliance facility, and then there's the statewide monitoring system that will be in place eventually or whatever, but let me just say that what it says is the statewide monitoring system, more or less context requires from a different meaning. System means an internet-based statewide database established, implemented, and maintained by the department under the Marijuana Tracking Act, which is a whole nother bill, whole nother law that will be law, which I will do a reporting about that very soon. I'm doing the notes on it right now, and I'm basically, you know, I'll tell you all about it. But anyway, the Tracking Act that is available to licensees, law enforcement agencies, and other authorized state departments and agencies on a 24-hour basis for all of the following. Verifying registry information on cards and tracking marijuana transfer and transportation by licensees, including transferee date, quantity, price, verifying commercially reasonable time that the transfer will not exceed the limit that the patient or caregiver is authorized to receive under Section 4. So they basically make sure that it's like on time and everybody's registered. So that's all that is on that tracking. Alright, so moving along. Now, pages 7 through 8, when when it comes to this report that I'm doing right now is specifically for if you are interested in opening up one of these marijuana facilities, what you need to know. You know, the first thing I would recommend is get yourself a lawyer. If you got a lawyer, ask him to refer you to a better lawyer, one that handles business and marijuana related things. I hate to say it, but I recommend the top lawyers in the game because they're all they all have been dealing with this and writing their ways around these laws. There's Rick Thompson can probably recommend you some people, and you go out to Quorum Law, and I mean if you're in the medical marijuana situation right now, you should already know the names of some of these top lawyers. Some of them have been activists for most of my life. I'm 44 years old, and these guys are a little older than me, and they're a little bit more out there and know a little bit more than me, and they've been doing this for longer than me. I would recommend talking to them, maybe seeing if they don't handle this many cases when the caseload comes, because everybody that really wants to get in on this business end of this is gonna go to the best lawyers that they can get. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm a business person. I have a degree in business, and I've been conducting business all my life. I would have to say that, you know, a lawyer will help you make sure all your paperwork is right and all your, you know, there's a lot in here. I'm not going to be able to get through all this in this clip. I'm just going to go through it real fast. So the next thing is the protections that this law offers for your business. And as long as you're following everything and you have your tracking in place and you're reporting all your data, then you're protected from pretty much anything. Growing marijuana, purchasing, receiving, selling, transporting, transferring marijuana from or to a licensee agent requested, blah, blah, blah. Processing marijuana, processing or manufacturing marijuana paraphernalia for medical use, processing marijuana, transporting, testing, receiving, etc., etc. Almost 2 pages of that. And then you have stuff that relates to business. Like, they're saying that, you know, you can be fancy or whatever you got your Business Cooperation or Corporation Act, the Nonprofit Corporation Act. You have to be in compliance. Your facility has to be operating in compliance to all these acts. Now, I'm destined to do a clip that details every one of these acts, because there's a few of them. They're up here. These right here, from my finger to that finger, that's the ones that Limited Liability Compliance Act, and there's ones that just have numbers, and this is the 1907 whatever, you know, I mean, Uniform Partnership Act. I'm going to look into all those and see what they mean by being in compliance with them. But your marijuana business can be just about anything. Like I said earlier, Citizens United style. A person is a corporation and anything in between. So then we have the local ordinances, which is very important, because the local ordinances is where you pay all your money, I think. I mean, it seems like it. First of all, if you plan on doing this, in the local ordinance situation, don't get all your plans set up for a specific area until you know they're on board and that they're going to pass an ordinance that's going to authorize the facilities. They have the option of zoning, and they have the option of making sure that there's not too many of this or that, like dispensaries on this block or grow facilities on this area. And they're going to set the fees. As a matter of fact, as soon as they're notified that an applicant has applied for a license, then they have to do a bunch of work too, because that's part of this law. They have to send a copy of the local ordinance that authorizes the facility, copy zoning regulations, blah, 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 blah. It's just a big process. So the local ordinances put people to work at your local town hall, you know. All right, now the rules is 3 pages of rules, well, 2.5. The rules basically say, all right, let me just, section 206. The department, in consultation with the board, shall promulgate rules and emergency rules as necessary to implement, administer, and enforce this act. The rules shall ensure the safety, security, and integrity of the operation of marijuana facilities and shall include rules to do the following. Now, before I give you this bullet list, let me just say that if you are interested in starting one of these marijuana facilities, remember the right-wingers, they always say, oh, we need a smaller government. Well, this is all Republican written, Republican voted to approved, Republican stamp of approval from the Republican governor. This is the most regulated, big government oversight. I mean, anytime along the chain of custody between a grow and a person that buys marijuana, and there's a lot of extra steps that they don't really need to have that they threw in there. Every step of the way, they want everybody involved to be like not corrupted by being involved in this and that, and you know, like you can't be a board member or a licensee at the same time or know anybody. And I mean, it's crazy. It's like some of these regulations are like, wow, you couldn't possibly just snap your fingers and all these people are in place to make sure that these regulations go off without a hitch and are able to be enforced. But apparently they have to be. Like, for example, your township has to approve that there can be facilities in your township, and then they have to set money as, you know, how much is it going to cost to get a license to do this. And then there's an assessment fee, which we'll talk about later, which is insane. And then you have to have a nice-ass insurance policy to boot. All right, so I'm getting beyond that. So we're back to the rules. And like I said, these rules are... they're the rules, all right? The Section 206, the department, blah, 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 blah. These are the rules for safety, security, and the integrity of an operation of a marijuana facility. Set appropriate standards for marijuana facilities and associated equipment. Subject to Section 408, establish minimum levels of insurance, get to that later, that licensees must maintain. Establish operating regulations for each category of license to ensure health, safety, and security of public and integrity of marijuana facility operations. Establish qualifications and restrictions for the persons participating in or involved with operating marijuana facilities. Establish testing standards, procedures, and requirements for marijuana sold through provisioning centers. Like I said, the testing labs are going to be happy to hear that because it just means they're going to get a lot more business. Mandatory testing, everything has to have like test results. A lot of people are going to get kickback product, and it's something weird. I don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, provide for the levy and collection of fines for violation of this act. Of course. Prescribe use of statewide monitoring system to track all marijuana transfers, and provide in the Marijuana Tracking Act and this act, and provide for the funding mechanism to support the system. Establish quality control standards, procedures, and requirements for marijuana facilities. Establish standards, procedures, and requirements for waste product disposal and storage by marijuana facilities. Establish standards, procedures, and requirements for securely and safely transporting marijuana between facilities. Establish standards, procedures, and requirements for storage of marijuana by marijuana facilities. Establish labeling and packaging standards, procedures, and requirements for marijuana sold or transferred through provisioning centers, including a prohibition on labeling or packaging that is intended to appeal to or has the effect of appealing to minors. Establish daily purchasing limits at provisioning centers for registered qualifying patients and registered primary caregivers to ensure compliance with Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. So all transactions are going to be monitored and cataloged and categoried seed to sale. Like if you're involved in these businesses, from the person that starts growing the seed to the transporter that transports plants to the dispensary, or the dispensary, or everybody is going to be the plant. Let's just pretend like you're the plant. The seed will be tracked, as it grows, the clone gets sold to the dispensary. Another facility buys it or something, or a caregiver or whatever. It gets up, it becomes a budding plant. Then the buds are sold to whatever. And every time they're sold, there's a tracking number that started out when it was just a seed. And as it went along that different chain until to the very moment when it got churned into buds, or buds got churned into cookies and they got sold, all them things that happened from the same seed or clone or whatever, the very first thing that started comes all the way full circle to the same tracking identification number for the thing that was over here. It sounds pretty cool, but I don't know if I'm not really interested in being involved with it. But if you're gonna be involved with it, you're gonna make a lot of money or whatever. I don't see a problem with these rules, man, so far. Well, anyway, establish daily purchasing limits. I said that. I don't know what the purchasing limits could be. I guess it's to make sure people aren't black market selling medical marijuana, Establish maximum THC levels for marijuana infused products sold or transferred through provisioning centers. I don't have a problem with that either. I mean, people, it's like saying, where was that? New York City. There, the mayor was trying to make it so you couldn't buy those giant pops. I mean, you're just making people buy 2 little pops or 3 little pops, and now they're throwing more garbage away. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to try to regulate people's habits. But yeah, I mean, you don't need 100 milligram nerd rope, dude. Sorry to tell you, you don't need it. That's just not necessary. Most people don't understand that that's what it is, and they'll start eating, a third of a nerd rope, and you're just going to be laid out flat. I'm not saying marijuana can hurt someone, but I'm saying if you don't know what you're getting and you're doing edibles, you're going to get sleepy, or maybe you took it thinking you're going to go to work and get some stuff done. Now you're sleeping, you can't even keep your eyes open. I mean, I've been there, all right? That's the only problem with marijuana, is you can get too high and just not able to keep your eyes open, kind of like I am right now. So anyway, back to the rules. Establish health standards, ensure safe preparation. That's just kind of like food safety basics. So I don't think the people doing making the products, this preparation, they're not going to complain. I mean, it's actually going to open doors of opportunity for people if they can afford these licenses and these assessment fees. That's the only thing. Hopefully people have people around them that can help them with investment. And I mean, this is a very good business to get your foot in the door of. And just as not a lawyer or a really experienced business person, I would have to say that I love all these opportunities. Unfortunately, I'm a caregiver, and I'm going to continue maintaining my existence doing what I've been doing, and that's just providing to patients, that need medicine. So anyway, there's going to be restriction on edible marijuana infused products, prohibit shapes that would appeal to minors. Okay, whatever. We're done with that. Anyway, we're done. So now we have the tracking. Section 207, a licensee shall adopt and use a third-party inventory control and tracking system that is capable of interfacing with the statewide monitoring system. So you have your tracking people and your monitoring people. That's 2 industries right there, created, boom, out of nowhere. Sounds shady, but they're there, and people are making money and getting jobs. I hope they're not using these monitoring tracking systems to literally bust people for providing marijuana to people, because that's just, it sounds like they're tightening up the valves and the control valve is getting tight, but I can't see the enforcement going on here. Anyway, license to enter or access information in the statewide monitoring system as required in the Act and rules. Third-party inventory control and tracking system must have all the following capabilities necessary for the licensee to comply with the requirements applicable on the license, blah, blah, blah. They track all marijuana plants, products, packages, patient and primary caregiver purchase totals, waste transfers, conversions, sales, like if you convert a bunch of trim into oil, the conversions, sales, returns, all that are linked to a unique identification number on back to originally the marijuana plants. So tracking lot and batch information throughout the entire chain of custody or the entire life cycle and product cycle of a plant. Tracking all products, conversions, and derivatives throughout the entire chain of custody, blah, 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 blah. Post-harvest raw product, blah, 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 blah. So a lot of, I can't emphasize enough, if you want to get involved in one of these marijuana facilities, get ready to be completely transparent. You know those nuclear facilities in Iran that have international monitors like 24/7? Yeah, that's the kind of shit I'm talking about, man. That's the kind of shit I'm talking about. So if you're okay with no Fourth Amendment, because like I said before in a previous video about 4209, if you sign on to this, the cops can walk in and out of your facility anytime they want and search anything they want. Any computer, any paperwork, anything. They can look at anything, count anything, do anything, look at your video, do whatever. That's no Fourth Amendment, no freedom at all on transparency. Like, so just get used to that if that's the kind of boss you want to be bossed by. If I wasn't a caregiver and I love my patients, so I'm not going to get involved in this. Even though people would love to use my name in it, I know that my name carries a lot of weight. It's a good reputation. My name has preceded me, but I'm just not going to get involved in the commercial aspect of this business. Just straight up, I just can't do it. So anyway, I'm not going to read any more of these tracking things because I'm going to do a video on the law that sets that up, so I'll get into it then. But it's a little intrusive. They want to know daily sales. It's not intrusive per se. It's just overkill. Like, just literally wanting to count every speck of everything that happened every day. Plants in production, plants destroyed, inventory adjustments, blah, 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 blah. It's just, if you think that Republicans like small government, you gotta be mysteriously misled, because this is huge government. They're wanting you to basically have a microscope on you while you're trying to do business and operate a freaking farm, So then there's some 10, 11 pages of just straight rules for board members. I'm not going to go over that because it has nothing to do with if you want to start a business, other than if you do want to get one of these licenses, you cannot know anybody on the board, or probably in one of those license boards either. But the actual board, forget about it. You are not allowed to know any of those people, for real. Board members cannot be connected to any licensee in the medical marijuana business. None of them. No, it doesn't matter. I could read you details about that, and there's page after page of it. But you can imagine that any kind of like suspicion of corruption is highly discouraged by this language in these pages that I'm flipping here. So we're looking at like an additional 10 pages all about, not being able to connect those two people. Yeah, and then we're on to licensing. So when it comes to the licensing part of this law, that's the meat, like when you're eating your chicken wing, that's the actual meat. The rest of it's just all a bunch of scrappy bones and like loose skin. It's just really bad definitions and focusing a little bit too much on things that really don't even seem to like matter or whatever. But the licensing is interesting. Section 401, I have a really weird question about this. I'm going to put this one to the test. This is one of my questions. So Section 401 says beginning 360 days from the effective date of this act, after the effective date of this act, which at the end of the act it says enacting Section 1, this act takes effect 90 days after the date it was enacted into law. So the day Snyder, let's say Snyder signs it tomorrow, you have to go 90 days, 3 months from that, and then boom, from there you have to count out 360 more days. So a year and 3 months later is when a person may apply to the board for state operating licenses in category class A, B, or C, grower, processor, provisioning center, secure transporter, and safety compliance facility as provided in this act. Oh boy. So what happens if you're operating one of these facilities currently? I mean, I'm not talking about caregivers and whatnot. I'm talking about the provisioning centers and safety compliance facilities, the testers. The testers, I understand, have to all have med cards that are full up, but none of them can grow, just so they can be like, if someone kicked in the door, they'd be like, oh, hey, we got med cards to cover the weight on all this. What are you going to do? You know, and possession is 9/10 of the law, so what are you going to do? They're pretty much good to go, right? But now you're saying this and that, and are they still good? And then the dispensaries, they're already getting busted because of selling medibles and all that. And I'm gonna go over the medible law pretty soon. You'll see that over the next couple of days. Is there something going on here that I don't know? Like, is there an amnesty program if you get arrested between now and when this 360 plus 90 days? Let's just say the 450 days. Are you safe? Can your door get kicked? Are you going to jail? Are you felony charges? You wasn't following something? What's going on? Anyway, the application shall be made under oath and blah, blah, blah. And all this is about licensing. They want you to identify everybody involved in your business when you get your license, when you're going for your license. And I mean, there's a lot about licensing. There's 5 whole pages, and they want you to tell you a description of the type of marijuana facility. There's a lot of financial information in the manner and form prescribed by this board, paper copy of electronic, blah, 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 blah. Licensing this and that. And you also must provide written consent to the inspections, examinations, searches, seizures provided for in Section 301, and disclosure to the board and its agents and otherwise confidential records, including tax records held by federal, state, local agencies, credit bureau, financial institutions. And this is while you're applying for your license or holding a license at any time. Information the board receives under the subsection is exempt from disclosure from the Freedom of Information Act. So they can get anything they want from you and don't have to tell anybody what they thought about it. Application must certify the applicant does not have an interest in another state operating license that is prohibited. Alright, so if you're coming from Colorado and you're like, oh, let me get in on the Michigan game, you can't do it, I guess, because it's prohibited under this act. So a lot of people were afraid of that on the rollout. They were like, oh man, now here comes those big moneyed up gangsters from Colorado and California, those big money people that are going to come in and not necessarily take over, but be so big and they're already famous, so it's going to shun a lot of locals. Like, Michigan's not used to, not had enough getting shunned over the last few. So, it's just another thing that I'm looking at, and I'm like, maybe people were wrong to jump the gun on this and say that these things that they said. Anyway, non-refundable fees must be paid at the time of filing to defray the costs associated with background investigation conducted by the board. So whatever, they're talking about the application fee. I'm not sure what that is. They haven't been set yet. Applicant show you additional amount to the board. That's it for licensing. Alright, and then there's a section on ineligibility, where the board shall issue a license to an applicant unless the applicant is ineligible because of this or that. The applicant has been convicted or released from incarceration for a felony under the law of the state or any other state in the United States within the past 10 years. So, if you committed a felony 10 years ago, you're good to go. You can get a license. So that's what that says. To the chagrin of Sheriff Bacard in Oakland County and many other prohibitionists across the state who really hate to see the people that they put in prison time and time again for nonviolent drug offenses come out and actually have a chance at getting involved in the very business that they were in prison for their whole life. You know what? I think they should all be allowed to be involved and get licenses, whether it was 10 years ago or 5. A nonviolent drug offender in Oakland County, the average time they spend in prison is 2.5 years. And there's some that spent 30 years or more. Oakland County is... Never mind. Alright. Ineligibility, 5 years. You've been convicted of misdemeanor involving controlled substance, theft, dishonesty, or fraud in any state, or been found responsible for violating a local ordinance in any state involving a controlled substance, dishonesty, theft, or fraud that substantially corresponds to a misdemeanor in that state. Falsifying information, if you're a member of the board, fail to demonstrate ability to maintain adequate premises liability, blah, 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 blah. And make sure that you're in compliance with a local ordinance. That's big. Don't try to start something somewhere unless you know they got a local ordinance in place. Then you'll know what their fees are for the application, and you'll know what their assessment fee is. Additional considerations. I just thought this was kind of funny. In determining whether to grant a license to an applicant, the board may also consider all of the following: the integrity, moral character, and reputation, personal and business probity, financial ability, and experience, and responsibility or means to operate or maintain a marijuana facility of the applicant or of any other person that either controls directly or indirectly the applicant, is controlled directly or indirectly by the applicant, or by a person who controls directly or indirectly the applicant, financial ability of the applicant to purchase and maintain adequate liability and casual insurance. Causality insurance. What they're saying is you have somebody involved that can demonstrate that they have integrity and they can run a grow op. Or a marijuana facility in general. I'm just saying grow up. That's just generalizing. There's 5 different facilities. So if you can demonstrate that you can run that, there you go. You know, I mean, you can demonstrate someone that knows you can prove it or whatever. Okay, you got it. More about if you've been indicted and charged with, arrested, convicted, or pled guilty to a no contendere to forfeiture, bail concerning, or had expunged a relevant criminal offense under laws of any jurisdiction, either felony or misdemeanor, blah, 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 not including traffic violations. So we're saying any crime you committed may be means and grounds for you to not get a license. Applicant has a history of non-compliance with any regulatory requirements. Okay, so if you just run businesses into the ground and just don't even care about your ordinances and stuff, you probably shouldn't try to do that here, please. Thank you very much. Litigation involving its business practices. Applicants have other standards and rules. Alright, so I guess I'm done with that. Additional considerations for people. And then there's a bunch of pages on renewals. What we got there? Renewals, we got 3 pages, and in a nutshell, 1-year period is a renewal annually, except for otherwise provided in this act. The board shall renew a license if all the following requirements are met, blah, blah, blah. make sure if you paid your assessment fee and your licensing fees from last year, I'm sure they're glad to take you back. I'm not going to look into that anymore. If you make it that far, you should probably definitely have your lawyer make sure your renewal goes off without a hitch. It don't look like that big of a deal, you know. I mean, compliance is the key word here, and you literally will have somebody watching over you, I believe. I don't know. So now we're on business types. You know, the license only in the name of the true party of interest. The board shall issue a license to only the person in name of the true party of interest. And remember, that could be a corporation too, so just the license is going to have one name on it, and you're going to have to use that for whatever business uses you have for it. Then you have hiring employees. There's a couple pages on that, or a few paragraphs anyway. There's nothing in there that's really that important. They're just being nitpicky about it. And then we have the failure to comply. If you fail to comply, you can get your license revoked and not ever get a license again, get civil fines up to $5,000 and against an individual up to $10,000, or an amount equal to the daily gross receipts, whichever is greater, of course. Board blah blah blah. So you got a bunch of talk about failing to comply and what will happen to you if you do fail to comply. And then it goes on to say that you have to have $100,000, no less than $100,000 in insurance for your marijuana facility. You have to prove that you have this insurance as you apply. So it's basically like you have to get this insurance before you even have a plant growing or a bud for sale or whatever. I don't understand the insurance, but whatever. It's all about liability and not hurting anybody else, and whatever. Then there's limits of license, which is basically like telling you what, you know, the license isn't basically a privilege, it's a right. It's not like anything special. It doesn't give you special rights. It's not a business license, blah, 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 blah. You can't even write this. I mean, fiction is never this fun. Okay, so actual licenses. So there's the grower's license, which I've went over in another video, but a grower's license basically says that a grower can grow not more than the following number of marijuana plants under indicated license class for each license the grower holds in that class. So you can have more than one licenses, and you can have more than one classes of license in your deck of cards if you want. Class A is 500 marijuana plants maximum. Class B 1,000. Class C 1,500. Simple stuff, people. I'm going to guess right now that those licenses are going to kind of cost a lot of money, but probably not going to be priced out of the reach of people that can handle that kind of work. For example, if you're going to get a freaking grow facility where you're growing 1,500 plants, you're going to have a lot of people working for you, and it's going to have a lot of money backing it up to get the initial cost and cost of doing business costs maintained. Is, you know, not just anybody can step up to the plate and run a 1,500 plant grow out. But anyway, there's the grower license, then there's the processing license, and it talks about that and what you got to do and the eligibility to be a processor. But to be eligible for a processor license, the applicant and each investor in the processor must not have an interest in a secure transporter or safety compliance facility. So again, they try to like root out the corruption by saying you can't know this person or do business with that person. So whatever, it's fine. It's no big deal. Secure transporter. Remember, you can't even be a qualifying patient or a caregiver if you want to be a transporter. That's the only thing there. I mean, there's a whole list of things there. Like, you have to have, each vehicle should be operated with a 2-person crew with at least one individual remaining with the vehicle at all times during transportation of marijuana route plan manifest, blah blah blah. Money gets transferred in different containers, like the marijuana's got to be in containers. The vehicle can't be marked saying it has marijuana in it. Blah 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 blah. Then there's the provisioning center. That's their new definition as what a dispensary used to be. Now that these places are going to come in, they are authorized to purchase and transfer marijuana only from a grower and processor. Sale, transfer only to a registered qualifying patient or caregiver. All transfers of marijuana to a provisioning center from a separate marijuana facility shall be by means of a secure transporter. So, they're writing the whole logistics into law. Like, you have to have this, this, and this. This is like, it's nowhere as near free market. It is if you want to be involved in each individual thing. It's free market for just that, because I don't see a monopoly happening anywhere here. But that is not free market, what they're doing here. Like, you have to have a transporter, for example. That's just, there's people that ride around town with thousands of dollars in little zip bags that drop them off in deposit boxes all hours of the night and day. Like, you don't see them freaking out and having to make sure they have a armored car. They can if they want, but it's not mandatory. Come on, man. Provisioning center, blah 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 blah. And then we have the safety compliance facilities, the license and the specifics of it. I don't see anything in here that's going to turn people away, except for the taxes, but whatever. So they're going to tax provisioning centers at 3% of their gross retail receipts. It doesn't sound that intrusive, but at the same time, it just sounds, unethical to charge people tax on medicine. In Michigan, I believe there's laws against that, or something. There's some kind of rule or something. You're not supposed to do it. And the more you look at, like, if you're a secure transporter, you can't have a patient card. What if they want to treat their ailments with medical marijuana? Then they just have to lose their job. That's terrible right there. Like, it's not like just because I have a patient card, it's a conflict of interest. Oh, I'm going to steal freaking weed. And especially the way you guys are talking about keeping track of every morsel of weed. Alright, so anyway, the taxes are collected, and then they're given away to law enforcement. Yeah. 5% goes to this, 5% goes to that. Money allocated under this shall be exclusively used to support the county sheriffs and shall be in addition to and not in replacement of other funding received by county sheriffs. So if you give them money from the marijuana fund, that doesn't divert funds from somebody else that was giving the cops money. It just adds to it. And then there's a 5% Michigan Commission to Law Enforcement Standards for training local law enforcement officials, 5% to the Department of State Police. That's another 10%, just give it right to the cops. And then there's the department's cost to implement, administer, and enforce this act, except for the cost to process and investigate applications for licenses supported within the application, expense of medical marijuana-related legal services provided by the department and the Department of the Attorney General, expense of the medical marijuana-related services provided by the Department of State Police. Did you hear that? They just gave that money to the cops. Then $500,000 is just going to throw that right to the Department for Expenditures of the Department of the Licensing Substance Use Disorder Programs. Those haven't even been identified as actual legal entities as far as I know. So you're going to just $500,000 to some people that we're going to say are substance use disorder programs. All right, okay, whatever. An amount equal to 5% of the sum to be allocated to the Department of Health and Human Services for substance abuse related expenditures, including but not limited to substance use disorder prevention, education, and treatment programs. What is this, and why does it have to come out of anything to do with medical marijuana? Doesn't make any sense to me. Expenses related to the standardized field sobriety test administered in law enforcement in Michigan Vehicle Code 1949 PA 300, blah, 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 blah. So now we have to spend the money to pay for all the breathalyzers and field sobriety tests in general for the cops. That's what that said. Here's another giveaway to law enforcement. An amount sufficient to provide the administrative cost of Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. And if that ain't enough, yes, there is these things called assessment fees. Regulatory assessment fees shall be collected annually from licensed growers, processors, provisioning centers, and secure transporters. The regulatory assessment for a Class A grower, remember 500 max, shall not exceed $10,000. Wow. Anyway, that's all, cost of doing business, right? You want to grow 500 plant facility, you got to pay the money, man. It's a lot of money, and it's not out of reach. It's not ridiculous. It's not like, oh no, this is only made for the crony billionaires to come in and swoop up all the facilities and monopolize it because they're gonna, like, all these California and Colorado people are coming. It couldn't really be further from the truth, and I can't believe it. Like, before I got into this project, I thought, well, that's the end of my game, being a provider to my patients and just being a caregiver, and then that didn't happen, and now I'm like, oh man, getting in these businesses is gonna really suck. There's a lot of things that suck about it, but it's kind of expected. It's, we got a long ways to go before anything cool happens. My legal eyes didn't happen, so this isn't that bad, man. It's not anywhere near as bad as what Ohio's looking at, or what Maryland, some of these other states where the legislative branch, like Illinois or Pennsylvania, has made the medical marijuana industry a straight up joke or a crony sellout, like just handoff. And the slow rollout's pretty slow, but it's not that bad. But they're asking for a lot of money. It's like every little part of everywhere, they're all trying to grab money on this. Assessment fees, blah, blah, blah. One more thing I wasn't too big hype on was the reports. All right, so Section 701. By 30 days after the end of each state and fiscal year, each licensee shall transmit to the board and the municipality financial statements of the licensee's total operations. The financial statements shall be reviewed by certified public accountant in the manner of the form prescribed by the board. The certified public accountant must be licensed in the state under blah blah blah, whatever. So they want to know every detail of your business, That's what those reports are. And then finally, like I said, this act takes effect 90 days after the date that is signed by Governor Snyder, and then 360 days after that, you can go ahead and put in for your license. Hey guys, you wanted to know about 4209 and terms of caregivers that are currently there operating. You don't have nothing to worry about as long as you wasn't selling all your weed to people that don't have med cards or something. And then you have people that make treats and stuff. Basically, there's a lot of people in that game. You're covered, man. You can just get a license. And then there's new jobs for people to transport weed and track weed and monitor weed. It sounds great. I'm not trying to get involved in any of that, but if you want to get involved with it, get a lawyer and do what you got to do. Get some investors. Go back over the law. It's only 62 pages, the one right there that talks about, the facilities. So it's not that hard to navigate. It's pretty simple language. I'm surprised at how simple it is. I'm surprised at how reasonable it is, considering it was written by a bunch of Republicans. And also it was written by people that were in the business. So there was a little bit of help there. I guess that's all I got to say about it. I'm not gonna try to get involved. I don't know. I really don't think I want to get involved. I don't think I have room in my life for 500 or more plants, to be honest. So, I, you know, there's good things and bad things about it. Let me just say, in my life's experience, I see it as if you did get into it, well, what would it be like? Well, first of all, you have to walk a real good tightrope, jump through a lot of hoops, pay a lot of fees, pay a lot of the assessment fee and the application fee. Those are really going to be high dollar fees, but it's going to be relative to the amount of money you're going to be able to make. If you're churning out commercial medical marijuana, it shouldn't be, you should be able to make a lot of money. The fees shouldn't be a big deal. Now, to get your foot in the door, that's another story. A lot of people don't have that money right on the forefront. If you have a big stash of money right now, or if you start right now in, like, say, a year or two when these licenses are going to be up for grabs, you might probably, it's something to look into. I wouldn't be totally discouraged about doing anything in the medical marijuana business in Michigan based on these new licenses that you could get. Now, having said that, I also wouldn't be excited about getting these licenses and making a lot of money right out of the gate either, because it just seems like they're going to be really tight on giving these licenses out. Down the road, if things haven't gotten better and we're still relying on these laws, then the licenses are probably going to be real easy to come by. A lot of people are going to get them. The industry is going to expand either way. There you have it. Like, if you're currently running a dispensary, you're gonna probably do what you got to do to be in compliance with this, unless you're getting priced out of the game by the fees. If you're running a testing lab, I don't know. I'm about to get a hold of my friends at the testing lab and see what they have to tell me. Other than that, wow, this clip's about an hour long, and I can't even believe I made this thing this long. But I hope that you did watch it, or I don't hope you watched it. If you did watch it and you made it this far, I hope you subscribed or shared this, or at least share the information, let people know that this channel is informing you about the current state of the drug war in America, and probably in your local area. I'll probably do stories about things happening somewhere nearby where you live, I'm sure.